why it's essential to focus on your questions for data analysis, the importance of executing without getting hung up on the numbers, and the new data sources marketers can expect to see in the future. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello. Hope you're doing very well. My name is Ander, marketing educator here at Instapage and host of this podcast, Advertising Influencers, where we speak weekly with the best and brightest minds in marketing and advertising and how they break through the noise to create successful businesses. Great chat in that last episode with Win White, a former VP at Oracle and Dell, which featured a conversation on amplifying early stage marketing. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, I highly recommend that you take a moment to find out as soon as we wrap up this episode. And there's good reason for that, especially given who we are talking to and our subject matter for today. Few marketers have spent time throughout the C-suite as a CTO, a CEO, and have formal training in computer science, possess a degree in business, and understand the complexity of the breadth of technology facing marketers today. Daniel Chalef is one of the few marketing and product professionals in this exact category. Originally from South Africa, he graduated from the University of Capetown with a multidisciplinary degree in business and technology. And then after 8 years of technical work as a developer in South Africa, he founded a sales acceleration vendor, KnowledgeTree, as the CEO and CTO. Most recently, Daniel worked as the head of marketing at Domino Data Lab, a platform centralizing the work of data scientists. And now he is working as a contract CMO and a marketing consultant for companies like Crunchbase, Mixpanel, and several early stage startups. I am super excited to talk to Daniel, so let's invite him to the Instapage headquarters here in San Francisco and go say hello. One of the things that I especially enjoy about doing these interviews for advertising influencers is speaking with people who have marketing, who have technical, who have growth expertise that I don't want to say I do not have, but I did not have at all at one point. And I've slowly been acquiring these more technical expertise as I've progressed throughout my journey as a marketer. And the guy that we're talking to today certainly has a grasping of those things, to say the least. I am here with Daniel Chalef, currently working with marketing at Domino Data Labs. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Ander. Nice to be on your show.
And maybe you can start by just clarifying a little bit about what you're doing there right now. First, what Domino Data Labs is, and then a little bit about your role there at the organization right now.
Sure. Domino is a central hub, collaboration hub for data scientists and a system of record for data science projects. Most strategic lines of business have systems of record. So if you think about sales organizations, have CRM, software developers have tools like GitHub. You have talent management systems or HRISs for HR departments. And yet data scientists don't have this tool that supports their workflow and is this canonical source for their projects or work. And that really is challenging for organizations, particularly larger organizations and folks within regulated industries. And so the Domino product is a system of record for the data science industry. So it's a CRM or GitHub combination for data scientists. And we primarily work with much larger organizations. The problem is most acutely felt within larger organizations, with insurers and financial services companies being a mainstay of our customers.
They certainly are working with very large amounts of data.
Yeah, they are. They're working with big data. Most people don't have big data. We like to think we have big data, and we have big data problems, but those folks have big data.
When you say most of us think we have big data, I think I know what you're getting at there, but I'm curious, is there a threshold where it becomes big data? There's no fine line, I imagine.
Yeah, given that you can fit a terabyte of data onto your laptop, that's not big data. Big data is when you're talking about petabytes of data. Or many petabytes of data.
Right, so we're talking many, many thousands of terabytes.
Yeah. But Data science does not require petabytes of data to deliver meaningful solutions to the business, solutions that drive competitive advantage.
That's something I'm really excited to get to later in this conversation. But before we dive in to those topics, I'd like to hear just a little bit about your background. Maybe you can tell us how you arrived in San Francisco, your journey as a technical professional and as a product person, a marketer, and a CEO in some cases.
Yeah, so I've taken on a number of different roles in my career, everything from being a developer or programmer, a business analyst, to being a chief technology officer and founder and CEO of an enterprise marketing technology company. Most recently, I have, and this is my first line of business role, helped lead up the marketing organization at Domino Data Lab. And I have, for most of my career, had a strong focus on product. I absolutely love technology. I love focusing on technology. I love understanding why people would buy the technology and really aligning their needs with and being able to articulate the solution to their needs and aligning that with product and product strategy. So very much helping people understand why they should buy your product and guiding where the product should go. At Domino, my current focus is very much on product marketing. So as I mentioned, I'm currently assisting with writing new website content and spending a lot of time on sales enablement as well. So as our sales organization grows and matures and we continue to sell to large organizations, some of the challenges become more acute around really being able to articulate benefits to a diverse number of stakeholders within these large organizations. And so I've been working on material and other tools for doing so.
So even though you have this very technical background, you're in this product marketing function right now, which comes down to cross-disciplinary marketing. If you're going to be writing content for the website, I imagine you also have a close relationship with sales and with your product team as well. One of the things that I have found, both with myself and many of the other marketers that I speak with, especially those who are focused on more of the messaging, more of the branding, is that a lot of the times people like us have less technical expertise than, let's say, somebody who is very proficient in SQL or databases or anything else like that. And you said that you don't have to be working with big data to necessarily use data science. Does that same thinking apply to when you are a more qualitative type of marketer and learning those types of skills?
Just firstly, just a quick clarification.
Sure.
I wouldn't necessarily call that data science. It would be more just analytics and really understanding what the numbers are telling you. However, I really think that the most critical skill is being able to ask the right questions. So to be able to frame the questions that guide your understanding of your business. There's no point trying to manipulate numbers if you haven't framed the questions properly. So it's really about, what do I need to be able to market more effectively, to be able to market more effectively to customers, to be able to do so in a more cost-effective way, and other very common business objectives. I think it's less important to be able to understand how to manipulate the data to answer those questions, because often the tools are very complex, and partnering with other folks within your organization that might have more tech skills, might understand SQL better than you do, if you have a data warehouse, for example, or might be able to write some code like Python or JavaScript to manipulate data that you're getting from an analytics product, or even just writing a dashboard in Tableau. There's no point having those skills if you aren't able to ask the right question. And so really it's about knowing what questions to ask and then potentially partnering with folks. I think that if you do want to build a more effective relationship with folks that you're partnering with, understanding some of the technology and how it works, and maybe being able to write some very simple SQL, or understanding the SQL that's being written for you and being able to manipulate that is very useful. But I wouldn't encourage necessarily folks that have got awesome branding skills, awesome skill for crafting stories. I wouldn't encourage them to learn Python or to learn JavaScript.
If we're going to engage in career development or professional development, there might be better places to spend our time if we're not already.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. In terms of forming these questions, in terms of forming the right questions to have the right answers to, in your mind, how do we as marketers do that?
There are a couple of ways to look at this. Marketers need to know who they're selling to. They need to know how to reach them. And they need to manage a budget to be able to effectively market to those persona that they're reaching.
And that's all about breaking through the noise, which is a phrase I use very frequently in this podcast.
Yeah. And so some of the questions that one would ask, who are the folks that are downloading, for example, our content or signing up for our webinars? And are they really participating in the sales process? And it's partnering with sales there as well around really determining who those personae are, the buyer personae. And then secondly, what channels should we use to reach them? And lastly, how much should we spend on each of those channels? This is a very rudimentary way of looking at it, but your questions will stem out of those three meta questions, if you will. And so it's understanding your business objectives that are important and that lead the questions, not necessarily the data that you have today. Because often we collect a hell of a lot of data. We've got all different types of systems, disparate systems that are collecting data for us. So we've got Google Analytics, we've got a marketing automation product, we have third-party content marketing tools, we've got a whole bunch of tools in our toolbox, and they're all collecting data. We can download reports from them, but there's no point having that data if you aren't able to frame the question, if you aren't able to ask the right question. And you can really spin your wheels. Yeah, you'll find some interesting things like, this type of person downloads assets on Tuesdays, but how's that really informing how you're executing? And so it's framing the questions that inform how you execute, not necessarily the interesting things.
Do you think that there are a lot of companies that are not framing the questions correctly because they're using the data incorrectly? They're not analyzing the data to the ability that they might be able to with the right skill set or the right technologies?
I think that often the questions that need to be answered are a lot simpler than what the data offers. And so we spend a lot of time investigating the data or anxious that we don't have the skills to adequately investigate the data, when in fact the questions that we're looking to answer, the ones that really move the needle, are simpler than we expect them to be. So it's really being able to drill down to what's meaningful for your business. For example, it might not be relevant to be looking across different personae, because the real impact of doing so, it might not really be useful for the sales team. They might be selling to everybody, or it might not be useful to be segmenting in the way that you are, and thinking that you have to have data for every single segment, and you have to analyze it in a certain way, otherwise you might be missing something. Often the answer is a lot simpler.
So it sounds like people, in some cases, are too obsessed with data.
Yeah, they can be. And I think that there's this narrative, particularly in the startup world, where everything's data first. And data is misused, it's misinterpreted, and too often, as I mentioned, we ask the wrong questions or aren't framing the questions properly, and they don't really deliver insight. And so it's asking yourself, what question I'm looking to answer and how do I frame it with this data? And I don't want to make out that one doesn't necessarily need skills to be able to extract value from the data, to be able to answer those questions. But having the skills, but asking the wrong questions isn't useful.
So we've talked a lot about establishing the right questions and asking the right questions, making sure that that is the first and foremost something that you need to have understood before you can make the most of your data. But then what do you do? What technology do you use? What is in your marketing stack? Maybe there are some specific products, or maybe there are specific categories of products that are going to allow you to really make the most of this. And if you're able to answer this in the context of top of funnel acquisition and advertising, great. But however you want to look at that, awesome.
Yeah, so most of my experience is enterprise marketing, really full funnel. But yeah, top of funnel you're going to have tools like Google Analytics. Those are going to provide you with aggregate data. It's not necessarily going to provide you with data that you can slice and dice by account or by account segment, for example, where a segment might be the size of company that you're selling to, or if you're B2C, it might be income for a household, for example, at an individual level. So you're going to have Google Analytics, and that's really going to provide you with aggregate data. Many organizations use a marketing automation product of some sort or another. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier how Domino is a system of record for data scientists. Well, marketing automation products are really a system of record for marketers. And consumer marketers use them, business marketers use them. They use them slightly differently, but really you're going to have a tool that both automates some elements of the journey, the buyer journey for your buyer, but also that's collecting a lot of data for you. Alongside that, you probably have a CRM of some sort. Most folks in B2B marketing use Salesforce. Similarly, from a marketing automation perspective, there are really three or four leading marketing automation products, ranging from Marketo, Eloqua to HubSpot. Some niche and up-and-coming folks like Autopilot.
We're big fans of Autopilot here.
Yeah. I figured I'd throw them in there. Yeah. And so those are an array of tools that you potentially use, with really the marketing automation and CRM being the two systems of records. One is sales-centric system of record, and that may contain a certain set of data. For example, which customers have been closed, which haven't, which allows you to drive some insight there, as well as the marketing automation side, which might have data as rich as how you acquired that customer, so the lead sources and the channels, for example. And then there's very often a bunch of other tools that you use, both for digital advertising. So you'll have a digital advertising platform like Marin Software, or something more lightweight like AdStage, which allows you to then control your Twitter, your Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google AdWords campaigns, as well as retargeting platforms. Now, it can become very challenging to manage sending of events. Whenever there's a conversion on your website, for example, somebody downloads a white paper or they watch a video, that's a conversion event. And so what you want to do is you want to be able to send that data through to the various systems. For example, with your retargeting, you want to tell the retargeting platform that this particular buyer has done, this particular visitor has done something, and you might want to put them into a different retargeting campaign. You will want to send that data through to Google Analytics. You want to send the data through to your marketing automation product, etc. Now, that makes for a very complicated web setup. And so we use at Domino a product called Segment, which allows us to put in place a single beacon or tracker on our website. Another tool that we use is Engagio, an account-based marketing product. We sell to, as mentioned, large organizations, and they're a really diverse, large number of stakeholders within the buyer journey. And it's very difficult to track individual leads within an account, while Engagio provides you an account view of engagement with your marketing campaigns.
Oh, that's
so for
really
example,
useful.
You might have people downloading white papers, you might have people attending webinars, a conference, and it's very difficult to see at an aggregate account view who's engaging with your company, how they're engaging, and providing that sort of insight to the sales team so that they can execute accordingly. And so we use Engagio for that.
We actually use Segment ourselves here. And I interviewed their VP of growth for episode 4, I believe, of this podcast.
Great.
Guillaume Caban, who we're huge fans of what he does and everything that's going on over there. So that's awesome. That's great. That kind of lays things out for some of us who might not have as much of a technical understanding as some of the other marketers out there, especially if we are anything close to the growth marketing space. That's kind of the buzzword that's taken off over the past few years. Daniel, we only have a couple minutes left. And so what I would love to know is where you think all of this is going, what you think data might look like in terms of acquisition, in terms of advertising and marketing a few years from now.
So we've already started to see data from non-traditional sources. We used to view mobile as non-traditional.
Right. Yeah. My, how that's changed.
Yeah, how that's changed, yeah. So we're now seeing a proliferation of data from other devices, so Internet of Things devices, whether they are wearables that are looking at our exercise. For example, Nike uses that. I'm sure they pull that data in, are able to then understand their customers better based on the different lengths of exercises and types of exercise that they undertake, as well as cars. So for example, for insurers, marketers at insurance companies, being able to understand how cars are driven allows them to tailor and develop, the marketers to develop new products that are more cost effective for customers. And they can then be more competitive within the insurance industry. And so really we're seeing IoT becoming a very interesting data source for marketers. And I expect that will increase. I expect that things like virtual reality and augmented reality and data from services and tools that offer augmented reality and virtual reality might start to, on the consumer side, become an interesting source of data for consumer marketers. And so I would say that there's a diversification of data sources in the future for marketers, which is only going to add complexity.
And levels of personalization that before were unattainable.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, I'm really excited to see where all of these new sources of technology, where all the data is going to go, how it's going to be used, etc. Daniel, it's been a pleasure having you in here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to stop by our office here in San Francisco. I know you're right around the corner, but thank you for taking the journey. One thing we like to ask everybody who comes onto this podcast is what's something that we as marketers can do for the marketing community as a whole, for ourselves even, or for you for that matter. And anything really goes. Anything that's going to create value for marketing in general.
Well, I would say more for the audience, make sure that you and your team don't overcomplicate your data analytics strategy. Don't get too anxious about it. Ask the right questions and make sure that you're using the answers to craft great marketing campaigns. But don't get caught up in the data. Execute.
It does not mean if you don't execute, then nothing's going to happen and all your data is useless anyway. So that makes perfect sense. Well, Daniel, again, pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Anders.
Here are the takeaways from our conversation with Ty DeGrange. With the correct implementation and proper testing of your data sources, granular data, analytics, and quantitative information provides tremendous insight to inform your hypotheses as a marketer and make science-based decisions on your marketing campaigns. However, the qualitative elements of customer feedback are still essential for creating a product and a value proposition that resonates with their needs. More importantly, listening to qualitative information about how your customers engage with the product can help you become a more flexible marketer when necessary. On a very similar note, be a flexible marketer. Just because one channel is driving the majority of your revenue and other KPIs doesn't mean it's guaranteed to perform that way in the future. As platforms and technologies change, marketers must be willing to shift gears when necessary. It's essential to be flexible and open to change, especially when the data and qualitative information at hand indicates the need for a pivot within your product and within your personas. Marketing is always and will continue to always be changing. New marketing technologies, channels, and platforms are developing at an increasingly faster rate every single year. And even though some platforms may appear saturated, a closer look at different pieces of data illustrates that the most significant impacts of specific channels might be yet to come, and that especially applies to mobile. Well, I think you can see why I was so especially excited to share that conversation with you. Ty had some great insights, especially with his ideas of what makes up successful modern marketing teams, including having an engineer and a product manager there as well. It is awesome that he was able to make the time to hang out with us for the past 30 minutes or so. And as always, along with every other episode, you'll find a complete transcript and the show notes page at instapage.com/podcast. And while you've got your web browser open, if you are so inclined, you're more than welcome to drop me an email. It's ander@instapage.com, ANDER@instapage.com. And seriously, I would absolutely love to hear from anyone who has anything to say about this episode, or any of our other guests, or anything else that might be on your mind for that matter. If there is anything I or the rest of my team at Instapage can do to help you and your marketing, I'd be thrilled to see what we might be able to do for you. Speaking of the rest of my team, for our next episode, I'm very, very excited to introduce you to someone I work with every day and who is absolutely one of the sharpest and smartest marketers that I've ever had the privilege of working with personally. Saranya Babu, our VP of Marketing here at Instapage. Saranya started out as a software engineer, actually, and eventually moved into marketing. Now, she is what I would call a B2B marketing expert, and she's crafted this very interesting and very effective skill set that achieves an incredibly powerful synthesis between storytelling, product marketing, branding and positioning, evaluating the customer journey of different personas. She does so many things so well, and I know you're going to see exactly what I mean. So I certainly hope to see you here for the next episode. My name is Ander, and this is Advertising Influencers, powered by Instapage, where our mission is to continually lower the cost of customer acquisition. Cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.